Waalaikumsalam, Prof.
You all in the around the campus or at home?
There are
Both.
some.
Some at
Both,
home, some
okay.
campus.
How many around Cyberjaya?
I'm not sure the total number, but maybe like 10? 10 to 15?
Right. Okay. So are you okay, all of you?
Alhamdulillah, yes, Prof.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, thank you. Good. Okay, so we start our session today with our morning prayer. Can somebody recite our morning prayer?
Hello. So we'll start the dua with Kitab Al-Fatihah. A'udzubillahiminasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. For Allah, the benevolent, the merciful, we seek your guidance and blessings in this effort of ours to gain knowledge and to serve all mankind regardless of race or creed. For Allah, we ask you the understanding of the prophets, the memorability of the apostles, and to be close with the angels. Keep us occupied with the remembrance of you with zikr, and our hearts filled with trembling for you. Truly, you are the powerful over all the things you desire. Amin amin ya rabbal alamin.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to praise to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala for His blessing, yeah, His rahmah and His protection. So we seek His guidance to gain knowledge, so that all this knowledge and skill, whatever we learn, we use to help others, yeah, regardless race or creed. Yeah, and with all this knowledge and whatever we do for ourselves and for society, hope to make us closer to our Creator, to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, inshallah. So okay, so today my lecture has given task to give this lecture, which I've been given since 2011 or 12. Yeah. On topic is just an introduction to chemical, biological, and radionuclear disaster threats agents. Yeah? So basically, what kind of a response or the effect of the chemical, biological, and the radiological disaster. So how do you respond? so we have started our session this morning with our praise to our God. Right. Okay, so basically the objective of and the learning outcome, basically the student should be explained the effect of the chemical, biological, and radiation disaster. Okay, and then should be able to describe the characteristic sign, the features or sign and symptom of each of the basic treatments, yeah, for each biological, radiological, and chemical disaster. And then describe the principle of disaster response, decontamination, and the treatment. And lastly, it's about PPE, personal protection and equipments, personal protective equipments, and and the mention about decontamination. Yeah, right. Okay. So basically, as introduction, we know there are chemicals, yeah, biological and nuclear disaster occur in the worldwide. Yeah. which commonly occur due to man-made disaster. Yeah. Okay. And this disaster like chemical, nuclear disaster, commonly due to war conflicts, and often due to employing of weapons of mass destruction. They use weapons to kill, mass killing of the human. So, however, the COVID-19 pandemics has been the worst and deadliest disaster in the history. So these are the worst biological disaster in human history. Okay, and in some country where there's a war conflict, nowadays some country they suffer from COVID-19 at the same time because of the war conflict. They also suffer from the chemical disasters. So these are the worst thing happen. So they get injured, but at the same time, the hospital treatment is suffer from the COVID-19. Yeah? So any patient usually when they come to the hospital, they need to be screened for the COVID-19. Yeah? Before any procedures or operation to be done, they have to be screened. Yeah? Otherwise, the whole hospital will be contaminated by the COVID-19. Then the hospital cannot be operated. They have to stop function. So all this COVID-19 has impact to the health services. So nowadays many of our hospital actually are occupied with the COVID-19. So any medical treatment or especially surgical treatment, the elective one has to be delayed. So they have to prioritize the emergency treatment. Yeah. So that's give a burden to our healthcare. Yeah. Okay. So worse when during this COVID, then there will be a war. Yeah, war conflict. There's a chemical disaster. Yeah, and so on. Okay, so we talk about the chemical threat agents and the fundamental. Okay, basically, first we talk about the type of chemical agents. So the type of a chemical agents, so it can be classified based on the effect of the human body. Yeah? So number one, they call it nerve agents. Yeah? This will affect or disrupt the nervous system, which cause paralysis. Yeah? People die because of the paralysis of the respiratory muscle. Yeah? So they couldn't breathe, couldn't ventilate, and then they'll die. Number two is the blistering agent. Yeah? So this will affect the skin, so will destroy the skin. Yeah? So when you have a skin damage, you have what we call it third space loss. So like when you have if you can remember, you have a hot water scalded. So the burns you have a blister. You kind of blister. So this will have a third space loss. So people we will cause dehydration. And hypovolemia. And if it affect the eyes, it can cause a blindness. And then the choking agents. So choking agents basically, so when this chemical enter to your lungs, what will happen? It irritates the alveoli and the bronchus. It can cause edema. The irritation cause edema. So the lung will fill up with the fluid because of the inflammation. And same time the alveolar, the bronchus, terminal bronchus become narrowed. So it affect the ventilation and the perfusion. So the movement of the air can be like asthma. So we have an obstructive kind of problems. same time you have a ventilation perfusion problems of the oxygen to enter, to be transferred into the alveolar. Yeah, okay. And then the fourth one is the blood agents. So this actually interfere with the oxygen at the cellular level. Yeah, so it affect the cytochrome P50. Yeah, so it can cause a cytotoxic. Yeah. Okay, and the fifth one is the chemical agents which is used for riot controls. Yeah? This one like what they call it, the tear gas. They can affect the skin and the can cause skin irritation, yeah, and then the bleeding. Sorry, the respiratory or breathing irritation. Okay, and then the these are the exposure pathway. Yeah, so the difference between the nerve blistering agent, choking agent, and blood agent and riot control. Yeah. Okay, the nerve agent usually the pathway is through inhalation. Yeah, mainly inhalation. It can be injection. Okay, so it affect the skin and the eye or contact area. Okay, and some of these agent it can be what you call it? Some the color become phosphorus. Phosphorus yellow color. Yeah, some can be smelled, some can be tasted, and most can be felt. It causes burning sensation and choking. So it can be detected by appropriate instruments. Can you hear me?
Yes, good.
Yes, bro.
Yes.
So anytime if you don't understand, you can interrupt or you can ask. Yeah?
All
I
right.
hope it's just a simple presentation. I try to make it simple and simplify. I have 60 slides. So hopefully we can finish 30 slides in 1 hour. Is it okay at 60 slides? Is it too much?
No, bro.
It's okay.
The slide I already shared. Okay, so we go back to our discussion about these chemical agents. All right, okay. These are the effect of the chemical agents. So the chemical agents, it can be a form of a vapor, yeah, aerosol, or it can be a liquid, and it can be a what do you call it, a powdered form. So some can affect, some have a persistent effect. So it remains on the surface. Yeah. So so what happens when it remains on the surface? It continues the effect. Yeah. For example, the phosphorus. So it remains. It causes burning. It continues to cause burning. If it remains on the surface. Okay. So it causes a persistent effect. Okay. And some is a non-persistent. It quickly evaporate and break down. Okay, these are example of a chemical or gases. So nerve gas, these are example: nerve gas, tear gas, pepper spray. These are modern example of a chemical weapons. So tear gas has been used to control riots. So it is used everywhere. Even in our country, when there's a riot, for example, so the police will use the tear gas. So you can feel the tear gas when they throw. Usually, the gas will rapidly spread. So you can see the white area is the gas, but actually the effect will be wider area, yeah? Maybe about, say if you are still about 10 meters away, you still get the effect of this tear gas. So it irritates the eyes, and then you feel suffocated. Okay, so to disperse the riots. So it has been used quite widely. So it just what they call it, cause irritation only lah. Rarely it cause severe injury. Yeah. Okay, these are example of blistering agent. They call it mustard gas. The color is yellow, like mustard. Have you tried mustard sauce? You know what is mustard?
Yes, bro.
Yes, bro. With hot dog, bro.
Yeah, you can put in the burger, yeah. So some people like the taste of mustard. So this sulfur mustard or mustard gas is a blistering agent, yeah. So the gas is yellow in color. So it has been used in the World War II. Okay, these are the effect of the mustard gas. So what happened? It causes a blistering. Yeah? So it can affect the respiratory system as well. It can cause death and blindness. Yeah? So when it affect the respiratory system, it can cause a long-term damage to the respiratory system. Yeah? So you can see the blister here. Later on, if you have like a burns, so you have a third space loss in this blister. So you have to give a replacement, fluid replacement. You have to treat the blister. Okay, and the nerve gas or sarin gas. So this has been used recently in 2016, 14-16, if I'm not mistaken. In some conflict area, yeah. I know in the Syria because I went there in 2014. Yeah. So sarin is, or we call it a nerve gas. It's colorless, tasteless, and volatile. So it can be lethal, even a very low concentration, with a death following within 1 to 10 minutes. So it acts mainly on inhibiting cholinesterase at the cholinergic synapse after direct inhalation. So it blocks the cholinesterase. So then it can cause a paralysis. And especially most important is the respiratory muscle. So you have a paralysis of the respiratory muscle. So you cannot ventilate, and then so within 10 minutes you will die. So basically you don't see this gas. So basically you can see the people suddenly died within 10 minutes. They are choking and then they died. Okay. So it's a very little gas. So they use this for mass killing, mass disaster. So we cannot see the gas, you cannot see the you're not sure, you cannot see because you cannot see the gas, cannot feel, or you cannot smell. So to treat, you have to use the antidote, atropine, or you have to give atropine intravenously. And also people who absorb non-lethal dose might suffer a permanent damage, long-term permanent damage. Okay, so these are example different between the agents. Some agents like a nerve gas, with a small amount they can affect a large area. Compared to the riot control type of agents. So they have to use a large amount to cover. All right. So basically, when there's as I mentioned, there's maybe a solid, liquid, or gas. It can be form of a solid, liquid, or gas. Okay. So basically what we do when there's a chemical agents disaster due to a chemical agents, yeah. Okay, usually we have to detect, yeah. So basically identification, yeah. So when you see large numbers of people with a similar symptoms, yeah, like disorientation, dizziness, nausea, blindness, yeah, death, yeah. So with a large number, yeah. So that's some can be detected by due to the color or due to the detectors, yeah. So so basically what we do usually we try to minimize the exposure, yeah. So basically we have to avoid the chemical cloud. So basically we have to the victim has to move away from the site, yeah. So they have to cover their face using a filter. Okay. Then next, the victim has to get a medical attention. Yeah. So what are the medical attention? Number one, the victim has to be decontaminated first. Yeah? So we have to remove the contaminated skin, clothes. Yeah. Okay. And then after decontamination, then we can we triage the victims, yeah, accordingly, and then we treat the victims, yeah, symptomatically, or sometimes can give antidotes, yeah, if appropriate. Yeah. So sometimes if you're not sure what kind of antidotes, so it depends on the clinical features. Yeah. Some features that suggest certain chemical agents, yeah, like organophosphate, yeah, for example. So it causes a cholinergic stimulation. Yeah? So the victims will have watery eyes, yeah? Watery lungs. Yeah? They have choking, coughing, yeah? Salivation. Yeah? It can cause diarrhea, vomiting. These are organophosphate poisoning. Yeah? So based on the symptoms, so you might have to think the possible chemicals. Yeah? So you can try a specific antidotes, of gas or organophosphate. They can try the atropine, call it atropinization. Okay, so otherwise, patient will be treated symptomatically lah. If patient dehydration, then they have to give IV fluids. Yeah. Patient has a low oxygen, they have to give oxygen, bronchodilator, nebulizer, and so on. Yeah. Okay, so if there's a chemical agents disaster, so what are the response? So we have to call the hazmat team, a special team, yeah, to deal. So we cannot do or deal. This team they are specially trained. Yeah? So they have equipment. They are trained how to handle, how to evacuate or extricate the victims. Yeah. And then they know what to do lah. They have their own SOP. Okay. Then usually they need to identify the chemical agents. So again, isolate and contain the affected area. Yeah. So basically the area will be contained, yeah? Like they put a cordon. The isolate means nobody can enter to that particular area. Yeah. So they put a border around, yeah, so that nobody will enter. Okay. And then the victim will be evacuated and sheltered, and then will be decontaminated and then treated. Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, the area might be cleaned up, yeah, by a special team. Okay, then what happened to the victims? Okay. So first we have to remove or to evacuate the victim quickly, yeah. So to reduce the exposure, okay. Okay, out of the area, disaster area, okay. Okay, next you have to limit the exposure or limit the effect of the contamination to the victims, yeah. So we do what we call it a decontamination. Yeah? So basically we have to remove all the clothes, yeah. At scene especially, so at least 80% will be removed. Okay, again in the hospital, we do the decontamination, yeah. Okay, so if a solid or powdered form of chemicals, usually you have to brush away first, eh? So you brush, don't splash with the water, yeah. After you brush away, yeah, clean it, and then you can splash with the water, yeah? Otherwise some might give a different reaction, yeah. Okay, right. So later we'll discuss on how the process of the decontamination. So basically the victim has to be taken away, reduce the exposure. Number two, remove the clothes, yeah, and then remove away all the remaining chemicals, yeah, and then we do the decontamination. Basically, you give a shower, yeah, or splash with the water, okay, and then okay, before you send to the hospital, you have to inform the team, yeah, hospital team or receiving hospital, yeah, what kind of a contamination, yeah, so that the hospital will be prepared. Okay. Okay, so in hospital, usually the victim will be sent through the IMSI department, yeah. So at the IMSI department, usually they have a decontamination area, yeah. So sometimes they have like a shower, coming down from the ceiling, or they have a special room to decontaminate the victims, yeah. Okay, after decontamination, and then the victim can enter into the treatment area. Okay. Faham ke? Understand?
I think understood.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. So basically, before you treat the victims, you have to decontaminate the victim first, before the treatment. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be contaminating the hospital. Yeah. Okay. So after that, after has been decontaminated, the victim has been decontaminated, then you can do the triage, and then the victim can be treated. Yeah. So after initial treatment, the victim will be observed, or they can be discharged home. It depends on the severity. Okay. Any question on the chemical disaster type? Then there is type, and then the response. What we do, we call the hazmat team. We identify the chemical agent, isolate the area, okay, evacuate the victims to reduce the exposure. Okay, then the victim will be decontaminated before we treat the victims, and then clean up the contaminated area.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who's the one responsible as well in the hazmat team?
Okay, okay, so usually when there's a disaster, so usually we inform the police, yeah, and then the hospital, yeah. The hospital usually they have what they call it, you call the hospital. Hello? Can you hear?
Yes, Control.
Yeah. So when you call the hospital, usually the hospital they have what they call it, emergency EDCC, Emergency Department Communication Center. Yeah. So So this incident department communication center, so you have to inform the incidents and what type of incidents. Yeah? So when you call the police, then police will inform the so usually they have a disaster response in each area. Yeah, this one is under MKN, Malaysian. Nowadays they have a Malaysian disaster team, macam committee. So from there they will call the hazmat team. Yeah. Okay. So basically, if you are notified, if you noted, then you will call to the police, yeah, and to the hospital. Yeah. The hospital will get the more information. Yeah. So it's kind of a teamwork response.
All right, Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, so we go to the biological threat, disaster or agents. Yeah? All right, okay. So nowadays the COVID-19 pandemics, yeah. As yesterday, 23rd of June, more than 179 million cases has been confirmed. Yeah, with more than 3.88 million confirmed deaths due to COVID-19. So this is one of the deadliest pandemic in the history and the worst biological disaster. Okay. Right. Okay. Previously, the biological agents has been used to treat or to there's a potential of a disaster. Okay. But here in COVID-19, we can see the real disaster of biological agents. So basically, the biological agents, there are three types: the bacterial agents, viruses, and also biotoxin. Okay. Example of bacteria: anthrax, yeah. Viruses, Ebola. Yeah. Nowadays, the clear example is the COVID-19. Yeah. And the other has been used is the ricin, a toxin. Yeah. Okay, so the biological agents, as you know, it can be transmitted. It causes diseases. Yeah, most important, it causes specific diseases or clinical manifestation of the diseases. So it can be transmitted through inhalation, ingestion, or through a skin contact. Okay, and some are very contagious, like COVID-19, quite contagious, so easily spread from person to person. Okay, and the other things about biological agents, commonly they have a incubation period or prodromal. Incubation period means a time where the symptoms will be delayed. So usually you are exposed, for example, in the COVID. So after you exposed today, you don't get the symptom immediately. So after 4 or 5 days, then you start to have symptoms. So there's a delayed effect. And some have a vaccine, some has no vaccine. And some organism, they can be dormant and remains in the environment for weeks to years. Okay. So basically, how actually we detect the biological agents? So basically, we have we call it index of suspicious. So usually difficult to detect earlier. It's difficult to detect immediately. So usually it's identified through symptoms or a test. Okay. So we need to have an index of suspicious. So usually, because it is difficult to detect, so it is critical to note the indicators. So based on the symptoms, yeah, when nowadays everybody is quite aware, yeah. So example in COVID, so everybody will take care, right? If you have a respiratory symptoms, then we have to think of COVID. Yeah? So previously, before the COVID, so we have outbreaks like SARS. What is outbreaks? So there are many other outbreaks. So usually it is unnoticeable, unless you see there are many patients with the same illness at the same time. So you can see maybe 5 cases, similar symptoms, okay, at the same time. So you know, you have an index of suspicious. Will it be an outbreak? Okay. And number 2, symptom usually unusual for the age. Yeah? And then the type of infection which is rare to the region. Yeah. And lastly, it could be animal death before the human death. Okay. So basically, this previously we used this indicator to have an index of suspicious based on number 1, based on the clinical symptoms of the victims, usually a bit delayed. That's why when it is a bit delayed, usually the agents has been spread, has been infected to other areas or other people. So that's why when they present after 5 days, so already maybe 10 or 15 people has been affected. Okay, as mentioned, the characteristic will be delayed onset because of the incubation period. It can be hours or it can be many days. So when you are exposed today, you don't get the symptom today. So if you have a symptom today, means your exposure is about 4 or 5 days ago. So where were you in the 4 or 5 days ago? Sorry, I was in the shopping center. I was in the shop. I had a contact with somebody with close contact with somebody with symptoms. Okay, so it delayed onset, and usually it has a prolonged effect because of the infection. So sometimes at the same time they can have a secondary spread of other diseases. Okay, so characteristic of a biological agents. So the common method usually through respiratory symptoms, respiratory and the skin. That's most common route of infection. So from the aerosol, or it can be a droplets. It can be through contact. So when you contact, you hold the contaminated area, and then after that, you touch your face, your nose. So then you get a infection. So it can be through a injection as well. But the most common is through the respiratory systems.
Prof? Prof?
Yeah, sorry.
What does the letters refer to?
Which one?
The one under aerosol cloud, there's letters that cause multiple casualties. What does the letters refer to?
Multiple casualties. letters. Okay. Can we cross the word letters? I'm not sure why. For some slide, I forgot to. I mean, some slide I forgot to edit to read through.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, detection to detect the biological agents usually based on the clinical high index of suspicion, and then look for clues, like uncommon agents, atypical presentation, atypical aerosol, food or water transmission for that agents, that particular agent. Okay. Yeah.
Isn't letters as in when they put poison in letters and whoever opens die?
Yeah. So that's one method of spreading the biological agents. They can spread through a way of spreading. I mean, that's has happened previously. Yeah. So they send letters to the specific victims, or specific people. So these people get similar symptoms. So it has been used previously to what do you call it, for threat, biological threat. Okay. As I mentioned, the detection of biological agents most commonly due to the most commonly transmitted through respiratory. So it can induce like influenza-like syndromes, prodromes like fever, chills, myalgia, malaise, and then they get a pneumonia, fever, rashes. These are clinical symptoms basically. They have a fever with altered mental status because of the dehydration. It can be diarrhea. It's a syndrome. So, but the most important in the biological agents or in this infection, the most common, the most common sign is the fever. Symptom and sign is a fever. So when there's an infection, either virus or bacteria, you have a fever. So then you need to ask where is the source of the fever. Is it patient has respiratory symptoms? The patient has other symptom, diarrhea or vomiting. So you know the site of the or the root of the infection, through respiratory or through ingestion. Okay. Do you know what is different between the viral fever and the bacterial kind of fever? Both are infection. Any different? Some people say, oh, this is a viral fever. Have you heard the term viral fever?
Yes.
So clinically, usually there's a different. If you are a doctor, so we can differentiate between the viral infection and the bacterial infection. Yeah? Okay. So viral infection, usually we call it a low-grade fever. Okay. So usually about 37.5, 38 degrees Celsius. Yeah. Okay. So they have all the other symptoms, myalgia, malaise. Yeah? Okay. So bacteria usually will be, they call it high-grade fever. Okay. So your temperature spike to 39 degrees Celsius. Yeah? Can be up to 40 degrees Celsius. But if you chart the temperature, you can see the pattern. Yeah? So the bacteria usually what you call it a spike, spike of temperature. Means there's a spike. Do you understand the word spike?
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, high and low, high, low, high, low, like that. So it's different than the bacteria. Sorry, viral. Viral is usually just a low grade kind of fever. So usually bacterial infection will be more severe. Patient is very ill. They are very severe dehydrated. Yeah, it's more severe kind of infection compared to the viral. Yeah? Okay. So as I mentioned, biological agents, there's large number of ill person with similar disease, syndrome, or death. Sometimes we suspect due to concurrent animal diseases. Yeah? So previously, some diseases occur in the animal and then they transmitted to the human. Yeah? Like Ebola, yeah? Example. Mad cow diseases, yeah? Example. Okay, so what to do in the biological disaster? How do you respond? Yeah, first of all, you need to identify the biological agents, the source, the area affected, and the population exposed. Yeah. So identify means through the clinical and the confirmation. Yeah. So they have a similar sign and symptoms. Maybe respiratory symptom, for example, like COVID, they have a specific. You have a fever, you have a cough, dry throat, yeah, loss of a smell, loss of smell. So these are common symptoms. And then you need to confirm to identify, you need to confirm by certain tests. Because the biological agents is slow and will be detected late. Means once patient develops symptoms, then you can detect. But if initial state is difficult, so the victim has been exposed, but they don't have symptoms, and then they carry they can spread the infection to other people. So that's why it's important to detect early, the source, to find out the source, the area affected, and the population exposed. So once you confirm by test, then you have to notify. So any infectious disease, so for example, whatever infectious disease, TB example, or dengue fever, so you must notify to the pejabat kesihatan daerah, local medical facilities or center, not center,
District health office.
District officer, so there's a district officer, so you have to notify. So from there, the district officer will make an action. Okay, so they have to isolate and contain the affected areas and the population. Contain, we use the word what? Malaysian words. Kita kena quarantine kan? Yeah. The victim will be quarantined. Yeah. The areas will be isolated. Yeah. So sometimes that's why in PKP we have a PKPD. MCO. PKPD means stricted, very stricted, and nobody can enter the area. Yeah, and the people inside cannot go out. Yeah. Okay, and then we treat the victims in the specific area, specific hospital, dedicated hospital, or dedicated area for isolation. Okay, and then then we have to vaccine. Nowadays, vaccine is the most important method to reduce the spread, yeah, to contain the infection, so that it won't spread. Yeah. Right. Okay. Sometimes in the small area of biological agent, so they might do the decontamination. They do a spray, or they use sterilizer. Yeah. But if the area is too large, for example, in Malaysia, you cannot. It's not effective to decontaminate the whole, the whole center, the whole cities. And then we have to follow up on the treatment. Okay, so basically, what we do with the victims, based on the clinical, we take history and examination. So we do what we call it clinical diagnosis, rapid diagnosis. When you suspect, we have to isolate. Yeah, and then we confirm with a special test. Yeah, for example, PCR. Yeah, rapid test. But all these tests, it takes some time. So when you isolate, the victim has to be treated first while waiting for the PCR and the rapid test. Okay, so it's isolate and then be treated. Depends on the agents. For bacteria, we give antibiotics. For the virus, some virus we can give antiviral, antiviral agents. Okay, then the immunization, vaccine. Okay, and then we have to trace the close contact, screening, isolate, and treat, to prevent further spread. Okay, so just take the opportunity to talk about COVID-19. I'm sure you all know about COVID-19. Yeah. So the severity of COVID-19 is highly variable. It can be asymptomatic. The majority nowadays is asymptomatic. They are infected, but they don't have symptoms. They don't have fever. They don't have respiratory symptoms. Or it could be at that time is what you call it, a prodromal, or is a incubation period. Yeah? So they don't have, they haven't present the clinical symptoms. Yeah? So majority, they are asymptomatic. Maybe 20% will be symptomatic, and about 5% will be severe, severe infection, which require what do you call it, respiratory support. When some require ventilatory support, they are intubated, because of it can affect the oxygen perfusion, ventilation perfusion. And the more elderly and with a medical condition, they are more severely affected. So they are at risk. Majority that are elderly with a medical condition like diabetes, and other medical condition. And transmissions via droplets and airborne particle, especially close proximity, or it can be sprayed through contaminated fluid. So the spread contaminated fluid into the eye, nose, and mouth. Sometimes when you touch the contaminated area, so you don't use a glove and so on, then you touch your nose, eyes, so you get an infection as well. So it is quite contagious up to 20 days, and it can be spread even they don't develop any symptoms. Okay. So there are a lot of measures nowadays in these PKPs to prevent, to limit the spread or to contain the infection. Okay. So the most important is the self-protection. So you must be away from victims or suspected. Do your own isolation. Then use your personal protection, mask, glove, hand washing. Okay. Okay. Sometimes we might do decontamination for these biological agents for small area or in the, for example, new agents. Nowadays, the government might do the decontamination in certain like supermarket, towns, and so on. But there's pro and cons. Is it whether it is cost effective or is it not? So whether our financial situation, where do we put our financial, whether to treat to stabilize the medical system, or we want to do the decontamination in this big area or towns. So with the economy situation, depends on our economic situation. Okay, any question on the biological agents?
I think no, Prof.
Okay, so we can proceed to the radiological threat. So radiological threat or agents, the source, these are common source, the medical equipments, X-ray, CT scan, radiopharmaceutical. Sometimes we will give radiotherapy, for the patient, industrial equipments, instruments, they use radiation to sterilize, sterilization, food irradiation facilities, okay, nuclear research lab, nuclear centers, university research reactors, nuclear weapons, nuclear powered. These are the source of the radiation. Although we do have some small amount of radiation in our environment through the from the solar, from the sky. So this ozone layer is helped to reduce the radiation from the space. So previously we have a nuclear powered explosion which caused a disaster, nuclear disaster, like Chernobyl in Russia. So how to measure the radiation? We use a Curie, amount of a material, and then we use also can use a RAM as a unit to quantify the dose absorbed. So you can detect the radiation using the detector. So some people who works in this area, like a radiologist, radiographer, or in the nuclear power, so they have a batch to detect how much radiation exposure they receive in a year. So that can be calculated in the RAM, how many RAMs being exposed to this radiation. And then the radiation, there's a special. Some radioactive material, they have a half-life, they decay. What we call it, half-life, half of the original amount of the material, half of the mass, original mass. These are unique about the radiation material. Okay, so the radiation you can shield depends on type of the radiation. Alpha radiation, you can use skin, papers, and it radiates very short distance, about 1 to 4 inches away. That's it. Beta radiation, so it can be blocked by metal, glass, concrete. So it can spread up to 18 meters. And the gamma. So gamma usually we use lead. So if you work as in the radiation area, for example, a radiologist or radiographer, or at the power plants, so we use a lead gown. It's a kind of gown, but it's made from lead to protect yourself, shielding from the radiation. So this lead gown, it used mainly at the neck, and the body. So the neck, especially to protect the sensitive area, like a thyroid, genitalia, genital organs. So it can be shield, and if you move away, then you reduce the exposure. Okay, so to protect from the radiation, so you can minimize the time of exposure. You can maximize the distance moving away, and then you can maximize the shielding, the protection using a shield. So what are the indication or the symptoms due to radiation exposure? When you get a radiation exposure, again, as I mentioned, sometimes the dose of exposure, small dose sometimes can be asymptomatic, can have a long-term effect, but high doses, you can get, can be symptomatic, depending on how long the duration of the exposure, and depends on the area of exposure. So the skin, you can get sometimes you can get redness, like a burns, get a headache, nausea, vomiting, hair loss, and it can affect immune system. Can have a short-term and a long-term effect. So the long-term effect, it can cause a mutation, and it can cause a cancer. The well-known cancer due to radiation is a leukemia. Leukemia is a well-known cancer due to radiation. So that's why the people in Japan, the area where they have a nuclear bomb, at the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there are a lot of people suffering from the leukemia, the blood disorder. So again, depends on the tissue. Some tissue are radiosensitive, like a bone marrow, yeah, lymphoid system. So that's why they got the lymphoma, leukemia, okay. Embryonic tissue, it can cause dysmorphism, yeah, due to mutation, okay. Epithelium, yeah, like skin, burns, gastrointestinal, you get the nausea, vomiting, yeah, diarrhea, and so on, yeah. So moderately sensitive organs like skin, lung, kidney, liver, yeah. Usually there's no immediate effect, yeah. Thyroid also quite sensitive tissue, so it can cause hypo or hyperthyroid, and also it can cause thyroid cancer, okay? And less sensitive tissue like CNS, muscle, bone, and connective tissue, they are less sensitive, less affected by this radiation. Okay, these are ill effect of the radiation. Okay, depend on the dose. So if you have a whole body exposure, yeah, more than 2 GY, GY is another way of measuring, yeah. So it can cause death, high exposure, and whole body exposure can cause death. Skin, as I mentioned, it can cause redness, erythema, burns within 1 or 3 weeks. Thyroid can cause hypothyroidism, yeah, from the first week until several years, yeah. Eyes, it can cause cataracts. It can cause permanent sterility and teratogenic effect on the fetus. These are the health effect on the radiation. So in acute setting, acute effect, they can cause burns. So you have like a burn effect. The skin become blister, yeah. So you have a third space loss, and then you have a diarrhea, vomiting. So you have very, very dehydrated, and you can die because of the dehydration. That's an acute effect of the radiation. Okay, what to do in the response to the radiological events? Okay, number one, we can identify the presence of the radiation. But this one, we have to use the specific equipment to detect the presence of high radiation. Yeah? So usually based on the incidents. Yeah? So what are the incidents? Nuclear reactor or the radiation produced areas. So then we suspect it could be a radiology or radiation exposure or radiation disaster. Okay. So again, similarly, we have to isolate. The victim has to be the area has to be isolated. The victim has to be evacuated out away from the radiation, or you have to shelter in place. Yeah. And then the victims has to be decontaminate, and then after decontaminate, then they receive the medical treatments. Okay, in summary, the comparison between the agents, the biological agents, radiation, and chemical agents. Yeah. So the chemical agents, the effect will be very fast, second to hours, radiation minutes to hours, and biological, the effect usually takes days, weeks. By the time it's already spread. Okay. All can have a potential impact, yeah, global impact. As you know, like biological, they have a high impact to the local and the global. So radiation, usually the effect on the city or region. Chemical, usually quite a small area. So biological, although is previously has been very low, incidence very low. The availability is low. But today the COVID-19 has spread, has widely spread and affect many areas. All right, okay. So any question on the biological?
No, Prof.
No, Prof.
Straightforward, right?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we go into the PPE and the decontamination. Yeah. So basically, the best method is personal protection. Yeah. Is physical protection. Yeah. Physical means okay, so there are many ways of to prevent the spread of the infection. Yeah, as mentioned, number one, distancing. So you have to move away from the contaminated area, or you must away from the non-case or victims. Yeah. So that's number one. So don't go to the area, crowded area, because sometimes you don't know, because the infection, there are many people who are asymptomatic. As you see nowadays, even though we are in PKP, yeah, not many people working outside, but the case still high. Yeah? We don't know, the carrier or has been infected, yeah, because they can be 80%, majority of them they are asymptomatic, or maybe at that time it's a window period, they are not symptomatic yet, yeah. So one is isolate yourself away from the people, yeah. Okay, number two, use the protection, the PPE, yeah. So because the infection can spread through the droplet and the airborne, yeah. So that's most important is the airway protection, okay. And number three is the skin, through the skin, yeah. So you have to protect your skin by either you use the special suit, or at least you use a glove, or you have to use a sterilizer, wash your hand washing. So these are various methods, effective method, prevent the spread of the infection. And then the spread, as mentioned, you touch the contaminated area. Sometimes you touch your nose, face. Sometimes you can get a splash from the fluid. So we have to use the shield, face shield. Okay. Okay, so there are many levels of PPE and the function. From the simple one as mentioned, Okay. Okay. These are physical protection. Yeah. So as mentioned, the time. So we have to limit the amount of time spent in contact or exposure the contaminated person or risk area. Yeah. So that's why we have to reduce your time. Yeah. So be as soon as possible. Number two, distancing, social distancing, maximize the distance from the contaminant. And number three is shielding. Yeah. Use highest level of the shielding appropriate for contaminant. Yeah. So shielding of the skin, respiratory system, eyes, and face splash. These are physical protection. Yeah. And we have other protection like to increase your immune system. Yeah. This one we use a vaccine to improve your immune system to a specific type of infection. Yeah. So the vaccine doesn't cover all the infection, but the very specific the infection. Yeah. So we have COVID-19 vaccine. Any of you have got the vaccine for COVID-19?
Yes, doctor. The first dose.
Oh, first dose. Okay, good. Where do you get it?
At UKM Bangi.
UKM. Is it AZ or Pfizer?
The first time it came around.
I see. This one the volunteers, is it?
Yes, bro.
Okay, good. I'm not sure whether the KPT, because the Ministry of Education, they announced they want to vaccine the school children, but the Ministry of Higher Education haven't announced yet. Yeah, for the IPT students. Yeah, especially medical students. I mean, we should.
I think mostly ada send information they're going to vaccinate medical students.
Okay, good.
But then start dengan clinical years dulu lah. Jadi
I
kita
see.
just still waiting.
Any date? Did they announce the date? Any?
They started on May 22nd. So
May 22nd. So now it's June already.
masih tunggu.
So we are a bit slow in the vaccine. Yeah? So as you see in the UK, I think they have done, I think, up to how many percent? I'm not sure. But I think majority have got the vaccine. So the faster the get the vaccine, yeah, we can control the spread of the infection. Yeah. So that's one way is to improve our immune system by boosting vaccine, and then we boost our immune system. To improve your health situation, yeah, also is helpful to, because if you are in good health, so your immune system should be good as well. Yeah? So the people with a problem with immune system, yeah, immunocompromised, diabetic patient, they have a poor immune system. Yeah? So they are prone, and also sometimes when they get infection, it can be severely affected. Yeah. So again, make sure we maintain a good health. Yeah.
Prof dah dapat vaksin?
Today, hari ni. InsyaAllah. In the evening, probably 4 o'clock. InsyaAllah. Saya pun lambat juga ni.
Oh.
Parents pun dah dapat vaksin ke? Your parents?
My father, yes.
Oh, Alhamdulillah.
Second dose next week. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
My parents also first dose dah.
Alhamdulillah. So again, the vaccine is help to boost your immune system, but the most important is to keep your body in a good health. Yeah, that's important. Okay, we continue on. So these are type of PPE, liquid splash protection to the skin, to the face. Yeah, using face mask, Google or face shield. Yeah, and then for the respiratory system protection, the simple is using the mask. Simple mask, 1 ply, 2 ply, 3 ply. Yeah, the more the layers, the better. And the good one is the N95. So basically N95, they prevent the spread. Yeah, so they block the droplet from the victims, from person to person. Yeah, a bit more expensive and sometimes a bit uncomfortable if you use N95. Yeah, of course the best one is the with a filter. Yeah, air purifying respirator or filter. This one is the best one, but it's expensive. Okay, skin protection, use the special suit. Okay, hand washing. And the best or the highest respiratory protection is the one with use their own oxygen tank. That's the best one, but it's expensive lah. So the less or a bit simpler one is they use the atmosphere supplying respiratory or respirator. Yeah, so there's a filter, and then they take the atmosphere oxygen, they filter, and then they can use this kind of respiratory protectors. This one commonly used. The oxygen supply, that one is less common or rarely used, only a specific condition. So the vapor protected suit, a body bag with a window, is a highest level of PPE. So this one they use for the if we want to people to do a decontamination. When they do the decontamination, they should use, because they go into the area which is contaminated. So this kind of a suit, special PPE is used. If you see the frontliner, suit, they have a special suit at the IMSI department, for example. Okay, so at minimum, at a minimum standard precaution, so ensure we try to get the best protection if you are a frontliner. So usually the government has SOP, what kind of PPE or suit you use, or to be used. If you are frontliner, you have to use a special suit. If you are ordinary people, what protection can be used as a guideline or SOP. Okay, for example, these are incident site. They call it hot area, yeah. And then some area they call it outside the hot area is a warm area, yeah. I forgot the distance. How big is the area depends on the incidence. Yeah. How big is you have to contain the hot area. Yeah. The warm area also has to be contained. You cannot enter the warm area. Yeah. Or the incident site, yeah, either biological, if chemical, a bit smaller area, yeah. But the radiological incidents will be large area, okay, because it can spread through environment as well. So normally, if a disaster occur, so we can set your tent, or if you are doing a rescue in the cold area, okay. If you are doing a rescue team. So the healthcare provider, we work in the cold zone with a standard precaution, hand washing. These are area where we work lah. Unless a special event, yeah. Then we have to use a special precaution or PPE if you go to the warm zone. Yeah? And we never work at the hot zone. Yeah? All right, okay. Now we talk about, yeah.
What's level C for the personal protective equipment?
Level C, yeah. Level C is actually, we have to use a special. This one is a level C. At least we have to use a special higher skin protection.
All right, Doc.
Yeah. Okay. Decontamination is also important, yeah. So basically, we try to alter the absorption, prevent the secondary contamination. And basically, we are removing the hazardous substance or material, yeah, from the victims. Yeah. It's a specific process, okay. So, so these are type. If you contact with a powder, usually we have to brush away first before you wash. If a liquid, then you remove your first you remove all your clothes. Okay, if there's a powder remain, you have to brush it away. Okay, and then you can wash. After that, you can wash the liquid and the vapor exposure. So everyone who exposed, you have to do a decontamination. Yeah? Okay. So So initially what you do at the scene site, the victim has to be decontaminated, and again in the hospital, once the victim is brought to the hospital, again they have to do a further decontamination process. Right, so these are the procedure usually at the site of the disaster area in the cold zone. So we have to set up the decontamination area. Again, in the hospital, we have a decontamination area. Usually, the patient will brought to the IMSI department. At the IMSI department, usually they have a decontamination room, or they have a specific like a shower from the ceiling, which drop down and then they drop the shower. Okay. So step 1, set up the decontamination and support area. Number 2, conduct the decontamination process. Okay. Okay. The triage, the word triage ni we remove it. Conduct decontamination triage. So basically all the victim, whatever triage, red, yellow or green, all has to be decontaminated before you start the treatment. Okay. After you decontaminate, and then you triage. Okay. And then patient will be treated according to the triage. Boleh faham ke? Can you understand?
Faham, Doktor.
Okay, I think this slide a bit complex sikit. Okay, first you set up the decontamination area. This decontamination area will be set up at the what they call it,
safe zone.
Safe zone. Number 2, at the same time, you inform the hospital, right? The incidents. So hospital usually they set up the decontamination area as well. Okay. So the victim will be sent to the decontamination area, and then will be decontaminated. The decontamination process at that area. So once patient is clean, and then they'll be triaged, and then they'll be treated at the safe zone. Okay. From there, the patient will be sent to the hospital. Yeah. Okay, at the hospital again, they have a same process. Patient, if necessary, they will be decontaminated again. Or sometimes the victim is brought straight to the hospital. So again, they have to be sent to the decontamination area, and then to do the decontamination process. And after that, it will be triaged, and it will be treated. Okay. Okay, type of decontamination, there's a mass decontamination, there's an ambulatory decontamination, and number 3 is a non-ambulatory decontamination. So non-ambulatory ni, for example, in the hospital, so they have a decontamination room, for example. So basically, what is a decontamination is by dilution. Dilution is a solution to the pollution. So what the actual process? So you remove all the clothes. If there's, as I mentioned, if there's a solid or powdered, you have to brush it away first, and before you get wet or showered. So here the shower from above. So whatever it is, you just get washed. Okay, any question? On the decontamination, protection and decontamination.
Doctor, for the radiation,
Mm.
is there any way to decontaminate or tak ada?
Okay, some radiation, it can be what do you call it? Radiation material, like certain like uranium, yeah. So okay, normally people who handle, they have a special protection. For example, as I mentioned, they use a lead gown or special lead suit. But in certain like disaster, yeah, like explosion, yeah. So again, the victim will be they might undergo a similar process. They have to be washed. Yeah? They have to be clean before the treatment is instituted.
Alright.
Yeah. And the problem, sometimes the radiation, some chemical, some radiation, it can spread through atmosphere. For example, during the Chernobyl disaster, the whole area, I think big area of the town is contaminated. So in terms of personal decontamination, so I think most of the time, whatever disaster occur, the victim will be undergo the decontamination process. Okay, any questions?
I see no problem.
So in summary, in all cases of disaster or mass casualty, so we have to maintain a high index of suspicion, the presence of a chemical, biological, radiation. Yeah. So it's quite common sometimes during the disaster. Yeah. Commonly the chemical. So we have index of suspicious, and with that, the victim will undergo the decontamination process. It's also very important to recognize certain chemical, biological radiation, or kind of with high index of suspicious. Certain features will indicate certain kind of disease or chemicals, radiation, based or exhibit by the casualties. Okay, is mentioned all agents need decontamination. The approach is the same, all agents. Radiation, there are many types of radiation materials, or radioactive materials, alpha, beta, gamma, X-rays. And again, basically we have to protect ourselves, and don't become a victims. Any questions before we end up our session today?
No problem.
Okay. The notes I've shared with somebody just now.
Yeah, doctor, I've already sent to the group.
Yeah. Okay. We can share. Okay. If there's no question, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Prof.
So hope to see you all in the future.
Inshallah.
Take care of yourself, yeah.
Stay safe,
Take a
Prof.
good health, and hope everybody will get vaccine soon. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Prof.
When is your exam?
Our mid course is this Friday, Prof.
Tomorrow, bro.
Or this Friday, or inshallah, or tomorrow. Okay. All the best for your exam and the preparation for your first pro exam. Okay, and good luck. Keep your good work. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hai semua.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, Prof.